So the new 1D&D Unearthed Arcana Expert Classes document dropped last week, and it was a huge thing with a lot of different changes in it, as is also readily apparent by the amount of videos that I have made on this channel already. That doesn't mean I'm done though, because in this video I'm going to give you the easy, quick overview of the most significant changes we got. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. First off, we now have class groups, and that is exactly what it says on the table. The classes grouped into different groups. There's the expert, which is also featured in this Unearthed Arcana, and those are bard, rangers, and rogues. Then we have mages, which are wizards, warlocks, and sorcerers. Then we have the priests, which are clerics, druids, and paladins. And lastly, the warriors, which are fighters, barbarians, and monks. Basically, the reasoning we get for this is that it'll be easier for newer players to figure out what role they should play and to compose a party that has a versatile selection of different character types, and it will also be easier for the designers because they can add in additional character classes later and just assign them to a group, and then all the items, feats, and whatever available to that group will also be available to the new character class. I like when things are better organized, and this is certainly better organization, and it will make things easier for especially newer players, which is, in my opinion, always a good thing. There's also been some changes to class design in general, and the overall takeaway here is that we are getting more class uniformity. It seems that now all character classes will get their subclass features at level 3, 6, 10, and 14. You're also going to get a capstone feature at level 18 instead of level 20, because at level 20, each character class is going to get an epic boon. I like this change. I think it'll be easier for the designers to better balance the game. A second major change that is going to affect everything is that preparation spellcasting has now been changed. It used to be that prepared spellcasters, clerics, druids, wizards, paladins would have a free selection of all the spells that are available to them based on what spell level they can cast, and then they could prepare up to their ability modifier plus their level or plus half their level in the paladin's case, and simply cast those spells as they see fit. Now prepared spellcasting has been tied to the spell slot, so you have to prepare the exact amount of spells for each level that you also have spell slots for. So if you can only cast one 5th level spell, you're only going to be able to prepare one 5th level spell. There's no doubt that this is a nerf for spellcasters, especially at higher levels, because they'll have less flexibility and ability to choose different spells when they wake up each morning. But we haven't really seen the effect of this nerf yet, because the two classes that we do get in this playtest document, the bard and the ranger that can cast spells, have both been made prepared spellcasters even though they weren't before, and prepared spellcasting is still looking to be better than the spontaneous spellcasting where you don't get to change out your spells at all. Diving into the bard class, there's been a lot of changes to the bard, some features that have been shifted around and changed slightly. The bard has also become a prepared spellcaster with access to divination, enchantment, illusion, and transmutation spells from the arcane spell list, so that changes its spell selection and how they prepare spells. But I think the most significant change is probably that Bardic Inspiration has been completely overhauled. Now the bard must give their Bardic Inspiration as a reaction, and it has to be used immediately. In addition, Bardic Inspiration can now also be used to heal other characters. Whether this is a buff or nerf probably depends on your playstyle, but what is a significant nerf, at least at early levels, is that Bardic Inspiration now follows proficiency bonus instead of charisma, so you get proficiency bonus uses per day instead of charisma bonus uses per day. The change is pretty significant at lower levels, and you'll be starting out with only 2 uses of Bardic Inspiration, and because Font of Inspiration has been moved to 7th level, you'll also now have to wait a bit longer before you can start spamming Bardic Inspirations after each short rest. So overall, I think Bardic Inspiration is an easier ability to use now, and that's probably a good thing, but I would like bards to be able to use Bardic Inspiration a bit more often, especially at lower levels. Magical Secrets has also been changed, so now you don't get to choose 2 spells, you simply choose a spell list, such as the primal spell list, and you can then prepare 2 spells from that spell list every time you finish a long rest. I think this is a huge buff to Magical Secrets, and something that is probably not gonna make it to the final product, because I simply think it's too powerful. Speaking of Magical Secrets, the Law Bard subclass, which we also get in this document, has also been nerfed significantly, as it will no longer get additional Magical Secrets at 6th level. It gets some other features, and while those features are pretty good and fine, the additional Magical Secrets were probably why most players chose the Law Bard. Moving on to the Rangers got buffed all the way around, especially when compared to the player's handbook Ranger. Notable buffs include expertise at 1st level, favorite enemy being a concentration-less Hunter's Mark, and Rangers now getting prepared spellcasting with access to all primal spells except evocation. There are several more buffs down the line as well, so overall the Ranger has just gotten a huge mechanical buff. And while I think that's great, I also think that some of the flavor of the ranger, such as favorite enemy as it used to be, natural explorer, and primeval awareness have gotten lost, and I would like for Wizards of the Coast to add in a bit of those flavorful mechanics as well. They may not be powerful, but they can at least give the ranger a more distinct flavor than what we're seeing in this document. But overall, a huge buff to the ranger, a buff that it sorely needed. Looking at the rogue hasn't changed much overall. Some of its features has been shuffled around a bit. It's gotten a new feature and lost another one, but the most significant change we've actually seen to the rogue is that sneak attack has been changed. It's just a little sentence that has snuck in there, and it is that the rogue can now only use sneak attack as part of the attack action on its turn. This means that the rogue can no longer combine sneak attacks with stuff like Booming Blade unless that spell is rewritten, and it also means that the rogue can no longer make sneak attacks as reaction. To most players, it may not seem like a huge nerf, but if you compared rogues to other classes and you were looking at the damage output, you really needed to get in those reaction sneak attacks once in a while to keep up. That being said, I don't really mind that the exploit has been removed. I think the intention was that you could only sneak attack once per round, which is now the case, but I would like for the rogue to get something else in return. And while 2-weapon fighting has been buffed for them, as we'll get to later, that's only a significant buff at lower levels, and it will have very little effect or increased damage for the rogue at higher levels. Moving on to feats, the most general notable change we have here is that all of the 4th level feats are half feats, which means that they give a +1 to an ability score, and also, of course, the rest of the feat. That makes them a lot more competitive with the ASIs, or normal ability score increases, which have in turn also been made feats. I think this is an overall good change. I want my players to consider feats at least, and with this change, there's a bigger change. I think that most players are going to go for feats. If we're looking at specific feats, the headline here is that martial feats have really been gutted. It used to be that you can pick up Great Weapon Master or Sharpshooter to get a -5 to attack and a +10 to damage. Well, that's been removed. The feats are still strong, but they don't have that extra damage boost that martial classes really needed. Simultaneously, the Polearm Master and Sentinel hack, where you sort of got attacks on creatures that got into the range and then you could stop them dead in their tracks, has also been removed, so that combo no longer works. Likewise, Crossbow Expert has also been nerfed and reworded because you can no longer wield a single crossbow to get that offhand bonus action attack. Overall, I don't mind that these feats have been nerfed and that there's been done something to make them less of a must-have choice for martial characters, but I really hope that martial characters are going to get something else in return, because they really needed those feats to be able to compete with spellcasters, especially at higher levels. And then we have some exciting new stuff because we're getting epic boons. Well, new is probably not the correct word to use, because these epic boons are actually lifted in most cases directly from the Dungeon Master's Guide. This gives us some standouts such as Epic Boon of Recovery that lets you regain half your hit points maximum as a bonus action once per long rest. There's an Epic Boon of Speed that increases your speed by 30 feet, or Epic Boon of Skill Proficiency that, well, gives you all the skill proficiencies you could ever want. But I don't think that any of those feats stand a chance really when you have the MVP feat, the Epic Boon of Dimensional Travel, which will allow your character and hold on to your seas now to Misty Step once per combat or short rest. All jokes aside, there are some pretty huge balance issues with these epic boons, and I would hope that the designers would not just lift them from the DMG, which is pretty old at this point, but actually go in and make sure that they're properly balanced and interesting and fun, because the epic boons that we're getting presented here are, well, a bit all over the place and maybe not as inspired as you would have hoped for. But I think it's a good idea. They just need to execute that idea a bit better. And now we're getting into the major rules changes, which are found all the way down in the rules glossary. The first playtest had crit changed, but that's been reverted now, so crits are basically the exact same as they've been in the 2014 rules, which also means that there will be no critting on ability checks and saving throws. Your monsters can still crits, paladins and rogues can rest easy, the damage is still getting doubled. Basically everything is back to normal. In another change from the last playtest, characters now get inspiration when they roll a 1 on a d20 test instead of a 20 on a d20 test. Personally, I still don't necessarily like how inspiration is incorporated in these playtests, but I do think that getting inspiration on a roll of a 1 is better than getting it on a roll of a 20. One of the most significant changes is the change that happened to exhaustion, which is now called exhausted. Instead of having 5 hard to remember levels, it now has 10 easy to remember levels, as each level is just a -1 to basically everything, even spellcasting save disease. I kind of like this new, more streamlined exhausted condition, but I do think that it would need to impact maybe movement speed or the amount of actions you can take or something, because it seems weird that a very exhausted character can still dash and jump around and do all that kind of stuff. I also think that 10 levels is a bit much, so maybe you can turn that down to 5 still and just make the penalties a bit more significant. There's also been a huge buff to 2-weapon fighting, and that is that 2-weapon fighting, the offhand attack no longer uses your bonus action. It's simply incorporated into the attack action. Now, I don't think this fixes all of the issues with 2-weapon fighting, because 2-weapon fighting was always pretty strong at lower levels. It doesn't really make it comparable at higher levels. For some of the character classes that, such as the fighter, gets a lot of extra attacks, it's still going to be better for them to have a great weapon. So some tweaking is probably still needed to make 2-weapon fighting actually work, but it is a buff to 2-weapon fighting that I think was necessary. In another notable change, the hidden condition was introduced, which basically just outlines what it means to be hidden, clarifies that, and that's something that has needed clarification. We also got a hide action rework, which got into more details about how a character would go about hiding. And what is really interesting here is that there's no mention of passive perception or the surprise pseudo condition where you didn't get to act in the first round of combat if you were surprised, which could lead us to believe that passive perception is perhaps no longer going to be a part of D&D moving forward, but that of course remains to be seen. The Barkskin spell also got changed, but since nobody cast that spell anyway, and nobody's probably going to cast a new version of it either, that doesn't really matter. But one change that is significant is that the guidance cantrip has also been changed. It used to be that you could spam guidance whenever someone did something to give them that bonus to the ability check, but now you can only use it as a reaction when someone does something, and you can only apply it to a character once per that character's long rest. So a significant nerf for the guidance cantrip, which also means that maybe we'll be safe from every cleric character going around and saying, I cast guidance. Finally, the Places also introduces a bunch of new actions, such as the influence action, the jump action, the magic action, the search action, and the study action. Basically, they're codifying or rewording stuff that was already kind of an action, but was hidden around in the rules somewhere. I like that they are actually implementing these rules, and probably it would seem making them a part of the player's handbook for the game. I think that's important, and I think that it's good that they're doing it. Alright, so these are my highlights for the 1D&D Unearthed Arcana Expert Classes playtest. If there's something I missed, please let me know in the comments down below. If you disagree or agree with my opinion about some of these changes, please also let me know in the comments down below. I read every single comment and I try to respond. And if you like what you do here, you should of course also subscribe to the channel and maybe like the video to help spread it around to other people as well. You can also become a patron over at patreon.com/Eventyr, where you can get to vote on which videos we make. We put out 5e encounters basically every week and a lot of other cool 5e content. Aside from that, there's not a whole lot left to say, except thank you so much for watching, and I hope that I'll see you in the next video.